The anime was opened by showing a free trade city, where, in the market, there was a commotion between people who claimed to be royal envoys and traders who were selling. On the other hand, a girl who knew about the incident immediately approached them and chased away the person who was making a commotion. She was Cecily Campbell, a member of the city's Defense Night Squad. Not far from where Cecily was currently standing, a commotion occurred, which revealed a former knight who was dressed in very dull clothes, Jack Strader. He continued to go berserk and swung his sword at objects around him and screamed about something that made him very afraid. Cecily, who happened to be at the scene, tried to stop the rampage, but there was not much a beginner could do. It seemed like the obvious difference in strength had Cecily cornered and thrown over and over again. Luckily, she was saved by a man who also happened to be there. He was Luke Ainsworth, a blacksmith whose sword could cut a knight's sword. After defeating the former knight, Luke chose to leave straight away. Meanwhile, Cecily, whose sword was broken, took the sword to a weapons craftsman. However, the owner said that Cecily's sword could no longer be repaired. If it could be repaired, the sword would definitely not be able to be used in battle. Hearing this, Cecily suddenly remembered the sword Luke used and asked where the young man lived. Finally, Cecily went to a village and came to Luke's house. There, she met Lisa, the girl who accompanied Luke when they met at the market. After introducing herself, Cecily thanked Luke for helping her. Apart from that, Cecily also asked him to make a sword the same as Luke's. However, Luke refused on the pretext that their family had not received orders for swords since his father, Basil Ainsworth, died. Right after Luke said that, a bell rang, which was a sign of danger around the village. Then the scene moved into the forest, which showed a group of knights fighting several mutants. Many of them were killed because of the huge difference in strength. Cecily, Luke, and Lisa, who also knew about this, finally came and saw several people lying helpless. Apart from that, they also saw mutants roaming around, which made Cecily immediately move forward without thinking. Luckily, Luke managed to save her right before she was killed. On the other hand, Cecily, who saw Luke's strange fighting style, felt a little surprised because, in the current era, she had never seen a single person fight by dodging every attack that came their way. Even Luke's sword movements and slashes were so smooth and looked deadly. Just after they were about to leave the place, suddenly, from a very far direction, there was an explosion accompanied by a strange-looking light. Parts of the forest were frozen like it was winter. This made Luke realize that someone had made a contract with the demon and was causing chaos there. Luke, who saw the terrible creature standing in front of him, quickly used the ability he had to make a sword until the fight was no longer inevitable. The fight ended, and Luke won. However, the grateful Cecily accidentally knocked on her chest and caused the cracked shield to fall apart. The next day, Cecily came back to Luke's house to apologize. But Luke, who was already dilapidated from being beaten by Cecily, was angry and thought that what he had seen was not his fault. Then the scene moved to the kingdom, where a meeting was taking place between 3 heads of state and a city leader. They discussed Luke, who again didn't come to the meeting. Apart from that, they also discussed the recent appearance of demons around the city. This reminded them of what happened 44 years ago in a very terrible war incident. They were worried that the appearance of the demon was a sign of Valbanil's awakening. If Valbanil revived, it was certain that the world would be destroyed, and the only way to prevent the world's destruction was to get the Holy Sword as quickly as possible. Then the scene was cut back to Luke and Lisa, who was forging iron to make a knife. Cecily, who saw this from behind the door, was so amazed by what they had done. At home, Luke explained that making katana was very different from making swords usually used by knights. To make it required a lot of dedication, and many things that ordinary people may not be able to understand. Cecily said again, sincerely, about her desire to have Luke make a katana. This made Luke melt a little. Finally, he was willing to forge a sword for Cecily as long as she was willing to pay for it. However, when Luke said all the costs had to be covered, Cecily was shocked. Luke did not accept installments and wants payment to be made in advance. Then moving to the kingdom, Cecily, who couldn't afford to pay Luke, who decided not to make her a katana, returned to the kingdom, angry. After that, she was visited by Commander Hannibal Quasar, who said that he would convey the special mission he would give to Cecily. Her mission was none other than guarding a magic sword, which was a royal heirloom. But when they arrived at the intended place, Cecily was met by a woman named Aria. There, Cecily, who was confused, asked about the location of the items she was going to guard. Aria said that she was the item in question because Aria's form was a magic sword that was born 44 years ago. In the afternoon, Cecily returned to Luke's residence and asked Lisa to accompany her to a place to eat. However, the fight between Cecily and Luke made the two of them look like lovers in Aria's eyes. Apart from that, Cecily announced another purpose for her visit, which was to show off a magic sword that she was carrying. Finally, Aria showed her true self.
風をこの手に、神を殺せ。になっちゃいました。
これは珍しいな。
負けんアリア。さすが、話が早いな。
After leaving Luke's residence, Cecily, Aria, and Lisa ate together at a restaurant. Only after that did they walk towards the kingdom. On the way, Aria said that she first woke up in the middle of the Valbanil battlefield, which was around 44 years ago. At that time, Aria's form was still a sword. She didn't know who brought it and why she was there. All she knew was that many people had died from her slashes. The next day, in the morning when there was still dew floating in the air, Cecily, who was practicing swordsmanship, was visited by Aria, who had just woken up from her sleep. There was a conversation between them regarding Cecily's slashing style. This made Aria say that Cecily was practicing the movements needed to use Luke's katana, which she thought was quite strange. Cecily thought that if she wanted to use it well, then she had to master it first. After finishing practice, Cecily decided to go to the city center and look at the preparations for the exhibition that would be held tomorrow morning. There, she met Commander Hannibal and Hugo Houseman, who told her that Cecily would perform a magic sword act at the exhibition. This surprised Cecily, and the sudden notification meant she couldn't practice first. The next day, accompanied by Lisa, Luke came to the exhibition and looked for a magic sword that he could use to kill the gods. However, even though exhibitions had been held several times, Luke still had not succeeded in finding the sword. On the other hand, Cecily, who was tense, tried to put on the best performance with Aria on stage. But, shortly after the show started, Cecily saw a knight that Luke had previously defeated at the market in the middle of the crowd, Jack. This made her panicked. Moreover, she also saw an unusual magical reaction coming from Jack. Finally, Jack turned into a fire demon and starts ruining the whole show. Even Aria, who was currently in Cecily's grasp, was captured and used to expand his attack area. A few days after the demon appeared in the city, Lisa woke up very early, as usual. Because their house was located among residents' plantations, there were many things Lisa could do in the morning, starting from helping to fetch water from the well, delivering orders for knives, to carrying baskets of harvest given by residents. After that, Lisa could return home, wash, cook, and wake Luke, who was still asleep. In the afternoon, Cecily and Aria visited Luke's residence to have lunch together. There, Luke confirmed once again that he would never make Cecily a katana because Cecily had not paid in advance. Apart from that, they also discussed the contract with the demon, which Luke himself knew that the contract was carried out by offering human flesh as an intermediary. Demon contracts were first used in the Valbanil War 40 years ago, where almost every human who took part in the war turned into a demon. Humans could carry out this contract by opening their chests and reading the death verse engraved on their hearts. But there was one other case where someone could force another person to make a contract, and that was something very dangerous. In the afternoon, Cecily, Aria, and Lisa, accompanied by Luke, went to the exhibition to buy some equipment. While walking, Cecily asked about Luke and Lisa's relationship. Moreover, Lisa had an important role in every activity that Luke had done. In the afternoon, after returning from the exhibition, Luke and Lisa walked hand in hand. There, Lisa continued to ask Luke to talk, but Luke always answered all these questions with a very cold answer and tone. This made Lisa feel very sad. Finally, when they arrived at a bridge, Lisa dared to ask Luke's opinion about the clothes she had just bought. Luke paused for a moment, then turned around and handed her a hat that matched the outfit. This incident made Lisa cry. She didn't expect that Luke could pay so much attention to her. The next day in the city, Cecily and Aria were chased by 3 people in black robes, 2 of whom were magic sword users named Doris and Margot. Apart from that, another person was a weapon user who was no less dangerous, namely Penelope, a knife user who could neutralize all attacks that come from a magic sword. On the other hand, at Luke's residence, Lisa was visited by 2 of their women, Charlotte Frobisher and Evadne, who claimed to be from the royal family. Charlotte arrogantly said that she had come there to pick up Luke and told him to pack up immediately. However, Luke, who didn't care, coldly told Charlotte to leave his house immediately. Charlotte, who didn't accept it, asked Evadne to turn into a sword. Turned out that Evadne was also a magic sword. However, because Charlotte wasn't good at using it, she was defeated by Luke very easily.
エバドに眠りをほどけ神を殺すその呪文は刃は肉をえぐり参るバカな今の
Charlotte said that her 3 subordinates were after the magic sword currently held by Cecily. Hearing that, Luke hurried to go to the city immediately. Arriving in the city, Luke managed to defeat the 3 people who attacked Cecily, when the 3 of them were careless because they felt that they had succeeded in getting the magic sword that Cecily was holding. Then not long after, Luke took them and Charlotte to face Hugo. In Hugo's large room, there was quite a heated conversation between Cecily and Charlotte, who continued to insist on bringing Aria back to the kingdom. This made Hugo wonder because he felt unsure of Charlotte. If Charlotte really had royal blood, then the king would not have sent his daughter out of the palace. Charlotte said that she and her mother had actually been expelled from the kingdom for reasons she didn't know. However, she had confidence that if she succeeded in bringing Aria's magic sword and the blacksmith before the king, then they would be able to restore her mother's reputation. As proof of what she said, Charlotte handed over a sword engraved with the initials of the royal family to check its authenticity. However, to be able to confirm this, Hugo needed quite a long time. During the required time, Charlotte asked permission to stay at Cecily's residence because the woman was a knight, which meant her residence was on a different level compared to other people. In the afternoon, Charlotte and her subordinates arrived at Cecily's residence. They were a little surprised because they mistakenly thought that Cecily's house would be much nicer than what they saw now. Plus, the treatment of the servant, Theo Atkins, who didn't care about the kingdom, made Charlotte work under Theo's responsibility. On the other hand, the 3 magic swords owned by Charlotte, who could not turn into a human, were in Hugo's hands as a guarantee of their safety. Meanwhile, Evadne's fire magic sword was in prison. One day, because Aria was curious about who Evadne really was, she came to Evadne and asked what a magic sword was. Evadne explained that the magic sword was one of the demons that was born because of a contract with the demons. When the time came, they would know what they were created for. The scene then shifted to Charlotte, who was now at Cecily's residence. That evening, Hugo, accompanied by Hannibal, came there with a reply letter from the kingdom confirming Charlotte's identity. However, the contents of the letter sounded like a thunderclap, which made everyone who heard it feel very shocked. Through this letter, the king said that there was not a single member of the royal family named Charlotte Frobisher. Her family had been branded as traitors to the kingdom for stealing their magic swords. For this reason, the king wanted his magic swords confiscated and Charlotte herself would be punished under royal law. Knowing this through his proxy, Hugo advised Charlotte to seek refuge in a military country. The kingdom armies who had already started moving continued to press their time until they no longer had a choice. The next day, right before continuing their journey to the military country, Charlotte told Cecily that they were given the 4 magic swords and were instigated by someone named Siegfried Hausmann. He was known as a person who could train strange creatures. A few days after Charlotte's departure, while eating, Cecily's mother, who knew that Cecily was close to a man, told Theo to dress her in the noble clothes she used to wear. Her mother then asked Cecily to go outside and take the man home. But when Cecily left the house, she felt embarrassed and kept hiding. She hoped no one saw her, until a blacksmith who recognized Cecily called and asked her to take a girl who wanted to repair a knife to Luke. Upon arrival at Luke's residence, as usual, Cecily and Luke carried out a special ritual when they met, which was arguing. After the situation was getting better, Cecily announced that she had brought a customer who wanted to repair her knife. But when Luke saw the knife, he said that the knife could no longer be repaired because the core of the knife was destroyed. However, Lisa, who heard this, asked Luke for permission if she would try to fix it. While waiting for Lisa to work on the knife, Luke invited Cecily to go to a cemetery. There, Luke said that the grave belonged to a girl whom he could not be protected. Her name was Lisa Oakwood, Luke's childhood friend who was killed by Valbanil 3 years ago. Then the scene shifted to 3 years ago when Luke was playing with Lisa. Lisa invited Luke to visit a forbidden area behind the volcano, but without realizing it, they went deeper. It was there that Luke saw Valbanil grab Lisa. Luke couldn't do anything. Then Luke's father came looking for them and was killed in the same place.
町のみんなを守りたいの。
火山に通じてるってやつ。頼るのもダメなんだぞ。
あと入ってみるだけよ。
あれが怖いもんか。俺たちは面白がって奴がいた。
At the grave, Luke said that the reason he took Cecily there was because she had a lot of similarities with Lisa. That night, while Luke was cleaning the katana he usually used, suddenly it started raining very hard. Along with it came an old knight carrying a magic sword that could control lightning. Luke, who realized that danger was approaching, immediately stood up and engaged in battle with the old knight. However, because of the illness he was suffering from, the old knight finally just left. He was now lying weak and helpless. He kept talking about the revenge he would take on Valbanil, who had killed his daughter. Elsa, who heard this, asked him to stop because it would endanger his life. But without realizing it, Siegfried came and said that he would help the old knight get his revenge. A few days after the attack by a mysterious old knight, Cecily came to Luke's residence with Aria. Unexpectedly, it was also the same day that the attack occurred again. The old knight came again accompanied by Elsa, who turned out to be a magic sword figure born of hatred for Valbanil. Luke, who already knew his abilities, came forward and tried to stop him. However, this was prevented by Siegfried, who suddenly appeared. In that fight, Luke was seriously injured because he was hit by a magic sword that could rot everything that touched its target. Meanwhile, the old knight died after confronting Cecily and Aria.
入ってるんだ。雷の裁き神を殺せ。
Just before leaving the battle arena, Siegfried said that the fate that every magic sword would live was to kill Valbanil. The reason why the old knight targeted Lisa was because the victim's blood flowed very thickly in Lisa's body. In other words, Lisa was a demon created by Luke using his childhood friend to escape from Valbanil when he was in the cave. The next day after burying Elsa and the old knight, Lisa invited Cecily and Aria to have lunch together. However, because she knew the fact that Lisa was a demon, Cecily hesitated and gave reasons to reject her. She and Aria then went to a place and talked to each other. There, Aria tried to explain what happened, including about herself, who also a demon was born of hatred for Valbanil. But at least nothing had changed within them, including Lisa. The little girl was the same Lisa they met the first time. This made Cecily finally understand, and she intended to return to Luke's residence the next day.
怖くなっちゃった？前みたいに付き合えない？私は何も変わってないよ。その通りだよ、アリア。バカだな、私は。すまなかった。任務が終わったら。
The royal meeting would be held again. Cecily, who was on guard at Hugo's place, saw Siegfried coming out of the carriage and immediately attacked him. However, his attack was stopped by a girl who also came down with Siegfried. An angry Cecily continued to rant about Siegfried's involvement in every mess that occurred. He also conveyed what Charlotte had previously said regarding Siegfried's involvement in trying to instigate and steal 4 magic swords belonging to the kingdom. However, Siegfried denied this because Cecily had no evidence. In a meeting attended by the leaders of the 3 countries, Luke continued to be asked questions about the magic sword he had forged, which was never finished. Moreover, Luke's past when he was accused of killing Lisa Oakwood made him a target. This, of course, made Cecily feel furious.
あなたの飼ってる悪魔は
買うだと。
例の技を用いれば聖剣などすぐで
枕ばかり作りよって
実は幼馴染を死なさ
されおったバカな小麦様が作った生枕を熊にされるとは。
が黙っていられるか。いつまで好き勝手に言わせておくキザが侮辱されているのだぞ。が会議ですか。
彼女も知っている。
そんなことをするものか。知りもしないで。
出ていけ。
In the afternoon after the meeting was over, Luke was involved in a conversation with Elsa on a bridge. However, their conversation was interrupted after several mutants came to attack them. Luckily, Luke, who was alert to the situation, managed to kill the mutants. The city had almost become a sea of fire. Mutants controlled by Siegfried appeared and started attacking the city. Apart from that, the demons also started to arrive and made the situation worse. On the other hand, Luke, who already knew Siegfried's position, finally got involved in a fight with him on top of the royal fortress. Finally, Luke lost after his body was hit by a fatal attack from Siegfried's sword. However, using the remains of their strength, Luke and Lisa used their special abilities to make a sword and gave it to Cecily, who was also there. After being injured by Cecily's slash, Siegfried chose to run away and leave them. Season 1 ended here. Thank you so much for staying in this channel and watching our videos. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can keep you updated with our latest contents. See you in the next video.